Ghost of humanity's glory. The void between stars was Commander Elena Reyes's sanctuary. For 6 years, she had patrolled the outer rim of human territory aboard the UES Sentinel, a mid-class border vessel tasked with monitoring the fragile peace between humanity and the Vex Confederacy. It was monotonous work, scanning asteroids, checking colonial outposts, and occasionally intercepting smugglers trying to bypass tariffs. But that monotony had saved her sanity after the war. Elena stood at the viewport, staring into the endless black. At 42, the silver streaks in her dark hair had come early, etched by stress and radiation exposure during the Vex conflict. The conflict that had taken her husband, her brother, and nearly broken humanity's spirit. "Commander," called Lieutenant Sado from his sensor station, his voice unusually tight. "We're picking up something near the Kellyan Drift." Elena turned, recognizing the tension in her officer's posture. "Define something, Lieutenant." "A ship, ma'am. Massive. It just appeared. No warp signature, no subspace ripple." She moved to his console, studying the readings with narrowed eyes. "Identification. That's just it. The computer says it's." Sado swallowed hard. "The UES Thunderchild." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew that name. The Thunderchild had been humanity's greatest warship, the pride of the United Earth Fleet, before it vanished 30 years ago during the final battle of the Vex conflict. The ship that had single-handedly turned the tide of 3 major engagements before disappearing without a trace. The ship that had become legend. "That's impossible," Elena whispered, but the data didn't lie. The massive battlecruiser's unique signature was unmistakable. Its silhouette burned into the collective memory of every Academy cadet. "Orders, Commander?" asked her XO, Major Chen, his normally impassive face betraying concern. Elena straightened her uniform. "Establish a perimeter. Alert command. Approach with caution. Weapons powered but offline." As the Sentinel edged closer, the scale of the Thunderchild became apparent. Nearly 2 kilometers of gleaming hull plating, weapon arrays that could level continents, and engines powerful enough to warp space itself. But the ship bore scars that hadn't been there when it disappeared. Massive gouges in its armor, sections blackened by weapons fire, and strange, crystalline growths along its ventral hull. "No life signs," reported Sado. "Minimal power readings. It's just drifting." "Open a channel," Elena commanded. "Broadcast on all frequencies." She cleared her throat. "UES Thunderchild. This is Commander Elena Reyes of the UES Sentinel. Please respond." Minutes passed in tense silence. "Nothing, ma'am," said the communications officer. Elena was about to order a probe launch when the ship's lights suddenly flared to life. Pulsing red, then blue, then a sickly green that no human engineer would have chosen. The Thunderchild's engines ignited, stabilizing its drift. "It's powering up," Sado reported, alarm clear in his voice. "Weapons systems coming online." Elena gripped the command rail. Shields up. Evasive maneuvers. Before they could react, a transmission cut across their comms. Not audio, but a series of mathematical sequences that scrolled across their screens, followed by words in broken English. "We orituarn. Ven GNC comes. The promise is kept." "What the hell does that mean?" Chen muttered. Elena felt ice in her veins. Something was very wrong. The Thunderchild had been humanity's greatest achievement, its most powerful defender. If something else controlled it now. "Command is responding," the comms officer announced. "They're scrambling a response fleet from Proxima Station. ETA 6 hours. We're ordered to maintain surveillance at a safe distance." Elena nodded, but her eyes remained fixed on the massive warship. The Thunderchild had been commanded by Admiral Marcus Kane, her mentor at the Academy and a man she had idolized. What had happened to him and his crew of 1,200 souls? The answer came sooner than expected. As the Sentinel maintained its watchful position, the Thunderchild's engines flared brighter. and the massive vessel began to move, not toward human space, but directly toward the nearest Vex outpost, a science and diplomatic station established after the peace accords. "They're accelerating," Seto reported. "Weapons fully charged." Elena's stomach dropped. "Warn the station. Now." But before the warning could be sent, the Thunderchild opened fire. Beams of concentrated energy lanced out, not the blue pulses of human weapons, but streams of green-purple light that seemed to distort the very space they passed through. The Vex station never stood a chance. It disintegrated in seconds, its defensive shields meaningless against the onslaught. "My God," whispered Chen. There were 600 beings on that station. Elena stared in horror at the spreading debris field. This wasn't a triumphant return. This was something darker. A new message appeared across their screens. BTRIYL repaid. The CLITL2NTINUEs. Find US 80 the beginning. The ship's comms officer looked up, face pale. "Commander, we're receiving an emergency transmission. It's coming from inside the Thunderchild." "Put it through," Elena ordered, her throat dry. Static crackled, then a voice. Human. Male. Desperate. "This is Lieutenant Commander James Kane of the UES Thunderchild. If anyone receives this, they're using our ship, using our weapons. We couldn't stop them. They're heading for the Genesis archive. Don't let them reach it. The key is in my father's log. Rise will understand." The transmission cut off abruptly. Elena felt the bridge crew's eyes on her. James Kane, Admiral Kane's son, had been a junior officer when the Thunderchild disappeared, and he had just specifically mentioned her name. "Mom," Chen prompted. "What's the Genesis archive?" Elena's mind raced. The Genesis archive was classified. A repository of humanity's most dangerous weapons research, including the prototype technology that had powered the Thunderchild itself. If something hostile had control of the ship and was heading there. "Set course to intercept," she ordered. "And get me a secure channel to Admiral Tekiva at command." As the Sentinel changed course, Elena retreated to her ready room. Her hands shook slightly as she accessed the classified files on her personal terminal. She entered her override codes and pulled up Admiral Kane's final mission log, the one officially listed as lost with the ship, but which she had been given access to years ago as part of a classified historical analysis. The log entry appeared on her screen, Kane's weathered face looking out from 30 years in the past. Final entry. "We've discovered the truth about the Vex and why they attacked us. They weren't the aggressors. We were without even knowing it. The Genesis technology is not ours. It was stolen, adapted from a crashed Vex scout ship 50 years ago. The energy signatures of our new fleet were interpreted as a declaration of war." Kane looked away from the camera, his expression haunted. "We're heading to the dimensional nexus the Vex call the Confluence. I've convinced them we want peace, that we'll return what was taken. Elena, if you're watching this, remember our talks about atonement. Sometimes the price of peace is memory itself." The log ended there. Elena sat back, her mind reeling. The official history of the war painted the Vex as unprovoked aggressors, attacking human colonies without warning. But if Kane was right, if humanity had inadvertently stolen and weaponized Vex technology, it would explain why the peace had always felt so fragile. A knock at her door jolted her from her thoughts. "Enter," she called, closing the file. Chen stepped in. "Commander, we've got a problem. The Thunderchild just jumped to FTL. It's heading directly toward Earth." Elena stood, decisions crystallizing in her mind. Match their course and prepare a boarding team. Chen's eyebrows shot up. "We're going to board the Thunderchild." "With all due respect, that's suicide." "Perhaps," Elena conceded. "But that ship contains answers we need, and James Kane is still alive in there. Besides," she added grimly, "if whatever controls the Thunderchild reaches the Genesis archive on Earth, suicide might be the least of humanity's problems." As the Sentinel leaped into FTL pursuit, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that she was being pulled toward a confrontation 30 years in the making. The Thunderchild had returned, but not as a savior. It came as judgment, and humanity was in the dock. Meanwhile, deep within the massive warship, behind walls grown over with crystalline structures that pulsed with alien energy, Lieutenant Commander James Kane, now aged and scarred beyond his years, watched through a viewport as the stars streaked by. Behind him, in the shadows, something moved, something not human, watching him with eyes that glowed the same sickly green as the ship's new energy signature. "They will come," the being said, its voice resonating strangely. "The one you called to, just as we planned." Kane closed his eyes, the weight of 3 decades of captivity and revelation bearing down on him. "Yes," he whispered, "she'll come, and then humanity will finally learn the truth. The truth that would either save them all or condemn them to extinction." Reckoning at the edge of light, the UES Sentinel emerged from FTL in Earth's outer defense perimeter, alarms blaring across every deck. They had arrived just minutes behind the Thunderchild, but those minutes might cost them everything. "Status report," Elena demanded, striding onto the bridge from the armory. She wore a tactical assault suit, magnetic boots anchoring her to the deck. "The Thunderchild has bypassed the outer defense grid," Chen reported grimly. "It's impossible. It knew all our codes, all our blind spots. Earth Defense Command has scrambled everything they've got, but it won't be enough." Elena watched the tactical display with mounting dread. The legendary warship was cutting through Earth's defensive screen like it didn't exist, not through brute force, but with surgical precision. It knew exactly where to hit, when to accelerate, which frequencies to jam. "It has all our playbooks," she muttered. "Of course it does. It helped write them." The comms officer turned sharply. "Commander, we're being hailed by the Thunderchild." Elena nodded. On screen. The view screen flickered, and she found herself looking at James Kane, or what remained of him. His face was gaunt, his once dark hair now entirely white. Most disturbing were his eyes, human in shape, but glowing with the same unsettling green luminescence that pulsed through the ship's new systems. "Commander Reyes," Kane said, his voice carrying an unnatural resonance. "My father spoke highly of you, said you understood things others didn't." Elena approached the screen. "James, what happened to the Thunderchild? Who's controlling you?" A pained smile crossed Kane's face. "Not who, Elena. What? The Vex call them the Archivists. Ancient, patient, vengeful." He glanced over his shoulder as if someone stood just out of view. "I don't have long. The Genesis archive isn't what you think. It's their technology. Stolen, perverted. They want it back. So they're going to attack Earth to recover it." Elena demanded. "Millions will die." "Billions died when we used their technology without understanding it," Kane countered. "The dimensional drives don't just move ships through space. They tear wounds in reality. Every jump we made with their stolen tech was killing them, erasing their worlds from existence." Elena felt sick. If what Kane said was true, humanity had been committing genocide without even knowing it. "There's more," Kane continued urgently. "The Archivists don't just want revenge. They need the Genesis core to heal the damage, to close the rifts before they spread." His image flickered. "I've bought us time by guiding them the long way around, but they're in control now. You need to get aboard. Find my father's personal quarters. The override still works, but you'll need his command key." The transmission cut abruptly as explosions blossomed around the Thunderchild, Earth's defense fleet engaging the massive warship. Elena turned to her crew. "Prepare for proximity jump. We're boarding that ship." 20 minutes later, the Sentinel executed a dangerous maneuver, using the chaos of battle to slip alongside the massive battlecruiser. Elena led a team of 6 through the emergency airlock, magnetic boots anchoring them to the Thunderchild's hull as they approached a maintenance hatch. "The ship's internal defenses will be active," Elena warned her team as they prepared to breach. Stay together. Our objective is the captain's quarters on deck 2. They cut through the hatch and entered the Thunderchild's darkened corridors. The interior was almost unrecognizable. Crystalline growths covered every surface, pulsing with that same unsettling green energy. The air was breathable but carried a metallic taste that made Elena's tongue numb. As they moved deeper into the ship, they encountered no resistance, no crew, no automated defenses, nothing. Only the steady pulse of the alien technology that had overtaken the vessel. "This is wrong," muttered Lieutenant Park, the team's security officer. "Where is everyone?" They got their answer when they reached the central corridor leading to the bridge. Bodies, hundreds of them, suspended in translucent crystal formations. The crew of the Thunderchild, preserved like insects in amber, their faces frozen in expressions of surprise or terror. "Are they dead?" whispered Sato, scanning the nearest formation. "Life signs are indeterminate," replied the medic, checking her instruments. "They're in some kind of stasis." Elena forced herself to look away. "We keep moving." Deck 2. Now, they found Admiral Kane's quarters exactly where they should be, though the door was now covered in the same crystalline growth. It took precious minutes to cut through, all while the ship shuddered from weapons impacts as Earth's defense fleet continued its futile assault. Inside, the room was surprisingly untouched, a museum piece from 30 years ago. Elena moved directly to a painting on the wall, a rendering of Earth's ancient lighthouse of Alexandria. She remembered Kane once telling her it was his favorite historical structure, a light guiding ships safely home. Behind the painting was a small safe with a biometric scanner. Elena hesitated, then pressed her palm against it. The scanner hummed, then clicked open. "How did you know your handprint would work?" asked Shen in surprise. Elena didn't answer as she retrieved a small metallic disc from the safe, Kane's command key. Along with it was a handwritten note. "Elena, if you're reading this, I was right about you. The password is atonement." The ship suddenly lurched violently, throwing them against the walls. "They've breached the main defense line," Chen reported, checking his tactical display. "The Thunderchild is making its final approach to the Genesis Archive facility." Elena clutched the command key. "We need to reach the bridge." The journey to the bridge was a nightmare of twisting corridors that seemed to reshape themselves as they passed. Twice they encountered crystalline barriers that forced them to find alternate routes. All the while, the ship accelerated toward Earth, its weapons systematically dismantling anything in its path. When they finally reached the bridge, the doors parted willingly before them, too willingly. Inside, the once familiar command center had been transformed. The stations were overgrown with crystal, the view screens replaced by pulsing membranes that somehow still displayed the space around them. And at the center stood James Kane. But he wasn't alone. Behind him towered a being unlike anything Elena had ever seen, vaguely humanoid but composed of interlocking crystalline structures that shifted and realigned with each movement. Its face was a collection of geometric patterns that somehow conveyed both ancient intelligence and cold fury. "The archivist," Kane said simply, his voice hollow. "The last of its kind." The being regarded Elena with facets that somehow functioned as eyes. When it spoke, the words formed directly in her mind rather than through sound. U-A-H-V-B-R-O-G-L-E-D-E-K-E-Y. Good. Elena stepped forward, positioning herself between the alien and her team. "I want to understand. If what Kane told me is true, if we stole your technology, then there are other ways to resolve this. There is no time for negotiation. The tears in reality grow. Your kind to okay without understanding. Used without knowledge. Killed without awareness." As if to illustrate its point, the view screen shifted to show something beyond normal space, massive rifts in the fabric of reality, bleeding energy into the void. Near these rifts, Entire star systems were being slowly pulled apart, the matter stretched into impossible configurations before vanishing entirely. The Genesis core, Elena realized. It's causing this. Yes, your dimensional derivatives, HFYs, that do not HEL. Each activation ERAC is more of HFY. My people tried to stop you. UCALLED at war. It was survival. Elena's mind raced. The Vex conflict, the war that had nearly destroyed humanity, had never been about territory or resources. It had been about stopping humanity from accidentally destroying reality itself. And now you're going to what? Destroy Earth to get it back. Not destroy. Reclaim. Repair. The core belongs to us. It is the last CED of our home world. With it, we can heal the damage. Kane stepped forward, his movements stiff, like a puppet. I've been trying to tell them there's another way, that we can work together. But after 30 years watching what they've lost, I understand their desperation. Elena looked from Kane to the alien being. And the crew, are they dead? It is USPNDT, preserved. They goil BRELEASED, and the core is restored. Their lives for billions of others. A fair exchange. The ship shuddered again, another hit from Earth's defenses, this one more substantial. We don't have much time, Kane urged. The archivist has agreed to spare Earth if we return the core willingly, but if they have to take it by force. Elena studied the command key in her hand. With it, she could potentially override the alien control of the ship, if the systems still responded to human authority at all. But what then? Continue a war based on a terrible misunderstanding. Allow more rifts to form, more worlds to die. The ship shuddered again, another hit from Earth's defenses, this one more substantial. We don't have much time, Kane urged. The archivist has agreed to spare Earth if we return the core willingly. But if they have to take it by force. Elena studied the command key in her hand. With it, she could potentially override the alien control of the ship, if the systems still responded to human authority at all. But what then? Continue a war based on a terrible misunderstanding. Allow more rifts to form, more worlds to die. She made her decision. Take us to the archive, she said firmly. I'll authorize the transfer of the Genesis core. Chen grabbed her arm. Commander, that technology is Earth's primary defense. It was never ours to begin with. Elena cut him off. And it's killing entire civilizations every time we use it. The journey to the Genesis archive was tense but unopposed. Once the Earth Defense Command understood that the Sentinel was escorting the Thunderchild rather than attacking it, a fragile ceasefire took hold. Elena used Admiral Kane's command codes to authorize their approach to the highly classified facility built into Earth's moon. The archive itself was a marvel of engineering, a massive complex buried deep beneath the lunar surface, accessible only through a single heavily fortified entrance. The Genesis core was kept in the central chamber, suspended in a containment field that glowed with the same ethereal energy that now powered the Thunderchild. When Elena saw it, she understood immediately why the archivists wanted it back. The core wasn't just a power source, it was alive somehow, pulsing with patterns that seemed almost like a heartbeat. And it was in pain, its natural rhythms distorted by the human technology attached to it. The archivist moved toward it, crystal structures extending from its body to interface with the containment field. 8 AHAs CWFFERD. As HAVWE all. With a gesture from the alien being, the attachments human engineers had grafted onto the core began to dissolve. The core itself seemed to respond, its pulsing growing stronger, more regular. What happens now? Elena asked. Now do you eal the doindies. Close the rifts. Restore what can be restored. Kane stepped forward. They need the Thunderchild. Its modified systems are the only ones capable of reaching the worst tiers in spacetime. Elena understood what he wasn't saying. You're going with them. Kane nodded, a sad smile crossing his face. Someone needs to represent humanity's interests, to make sure they understand we didn't know what we were doing, that we can learn, change. As the core was carefully extracted from its containment field, alarms began to sound throughout the facility. On the surface, the Earth Defense Fleet was repositioning, some commanders clearly unwilling to let humanity's greatest technological asset be taken. We must go. Now. Elena made her final decision. I'm coming too, she said firmly. 2 representatives are better than 1, and I need to see these tiers for myself, to understand what we've done. As they prepared to return to the Thunderchild, Elena sent a final transmission to Earth Command, a complete record of everything she'd learned, everything the archivist had shown her. The wounds in reality, the civilizations lost, the terrible misunderstanding that had led to war. Humanity deserves the truth, she told Chen as she transferred command of the Sentinel to him. Maybe it will help us make better choices next time. Hours later, the Thunderchild departed Earth orbit, the Genesis core safely integrated into its systems. On the bridge, Elena watched her homeworld recede, wondering if she would ever see it again. It's beautiful from here, Kane said, standing beside her. Worth saving. All worlds are, the archivist communicated. That is HFY most HAL the tiers, before they ISPRIAD February. As the Thunderchild prepared to jump to the nearest dimensional rift, Elena felt a strange sense of purpose. Humanity had made a terrible mistake, but now they had a chance to make it right, to atone. The ship entered the dimensional corridor, reality bending around them, not tearing now, but folding gently, guided by the core's true purpose. Through the view screen, Elena saw the first of the rifts, a jagged wound in the fabric of space-time, leaking energy and matter into the void. The archivist extended crystalline appendages toward the ship's controls, interfacing directly with the core. The Thunderchild's weapons, reconfigured to their original purpose, fired not destructive energy, but a stream of particles that began to knit the edges of the rift together. It's working, Kane whispered in awe. This is only the beginning, the archivist communicated. There are many tiers. The Juror and EY will be long. Elena nodded, watching as the rift slowly began to close. Then we better get started. As the Thunderchild continued its work, a message reached Earth, transmitted through the closing rift, a final communication from Commander Elena Reyes to humanity. We were wrong about the war, wrong about the Vex, wrong about our place in the universe, but we have a chance to make it right. Look up at the stars and remember, we are not alone, and our actions have consequences beyond our understanding. The Thunderchild will return when our work is done. Until then, do better than we did. Learn, grow. And when you develop new technologies, remember to ask not just if you can, but if you should. Across Earth, scientists began dismantling the remaining Genesis technology, guided by the data Elena had sent. The peace with the Vex Confederacy solidified as understanding replaced fear, and humanity looked to the stars with new eyes, not as conquerors, but as students with much still to learn. The lost warship had returned, bringing not just devastation, but ultimately salvation. And somewhere in the depths of space, the Thunderchild continued its mission of healing, a beacon of hope rather than an instrument of war, fulfilling at last its original purpose, to guide ships safely home.